At the howling, wind-battered entrance of a mountain cave that looks designed by a game developer who maxed the menacing slider, Bandit Lord Gidu had already hit his limit. Sword white-knuckled, body coiled forward in a full hostile lean, gasping out his disbelief that someone had actually found his hideout. Across the rocky clearing, Commander Illias Ratzel stood in pristine plate armor, flanked by her entire Ties Kingdom squad, locked into combat formation, and looking completely unbothered. While Guido's face cycled through disbelief before landing on a smug, lecherous grin as he demanded to know what sorcery led them here, the narrator stepped in to gently correct the record. No sorcery. The tracker had exactly one skill in his entire kit: comprehension, and nothing else. That very guy stood completely isolated in the center of the rocky path, dwarfed by elite knights on all sides, his face locked into maximum fear mode, pupils pinprick small, forehead beating cold sweat, body frozen solid. His expression triggered a hard cut to the past, specifically day one. Our protagonist had opened his eyes flat on his back on a lush forest floor, zero gear, white shirt and trousers only, staring up at a canopy of trees shimmering with magical spores and an ethereal glow that absolutely screamed tutorial zone. He blinked. Then he realized. The flora pulsed with a soft, dreamlike light, and quietly, one thought dropped in. He'd transmigrated into another world. He sat up, rubbed his face, let out the most exhausted yawn in Isekai history, then froze, sweat already forming as a deep, menacing presence somewhere in the tree line shrunk his pupils to pinpricks instantly. Being a sensible individual, he shoved his hands in his pockets and started trudging through the brush, throwing nervous glances into the shadows, while explaining to his invisible audience that the backstory's embarrassing and he'd rather skip it. Then, the bushes detonated. A massive, dark-furred bear with razor claws and genuine murder intent reared up directly behind him and roared, and he went completely locked up before his legs took over and he bolted, his mind sprinting through every option as the bear's footsteps shook the forest floor. Play dead, run, fight, before somehow landing on extending one trembling hand toward the charging predator. Bonjour, the bear stopped. One full second of the most surreal silence in this or any other world. Then it bared its fangs and roared directly in his face again, because of course it did. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, a massive, semi-transparent slime dropped from above and engulfed the entire bear in one fluid, catastrophic gulp. He stood there, jaw fully disconnected. He scrambled backward as the creature bubbled and expanded across the clearing. This massive, shifting, gel-bodied nightmare. An actual slime, flooding every inch of available space with wet, guttural sounds and a stench of active digestion so vile it had him gagging and retreating as the acidic edge crept toward his feet. He screamed and hit the deck as a violent shockwave erupted nearby and peered up through his messy hair at the amorphous, dripping creature still looming in the shadows, still processing. The bear was completely gone, dissolved, not a trace remaining, and the slime was still moving. He pressed himself against a rock wall, covered his mouth, and ordered himself to calm down. He had one skill. One. He was going to use it. Comprehend. Snapping out of the survival recap and turning to address his invisible audience in an ordinary, now fully non-glowing forest, our guy brandished the thick wooden branch he'd found and named his Spider's Nest Mower Sword Wooden, waving it with the conviction of a man who has decided a stick is legendary, and glossed over the highlights. He'd spotted armed figures in bandana and leather get-ups on the mountain who were, carrying human flesh, which had him hiding in the brush, shaking about it. He'd cried, a little, he admits, when he found a road, and carved what he insists was a commemorative message, not a scribble, into a tree to mark the occasion. He then turned to us with the specific, exhausted expression of someone who has genuinely been through it. Readers, it was terrible. Then he stepped out of the tree line onto a grassy cliff and stopped. Below him was a sprawling fantasy city. High stone walls, a towering castle, the full package. He had approximately 4 seconds to feel something like relief before a garbled voice came from the foliage behind him, and 2 fully armored knights lunged out of the shadows, grabbed him by both arms, and started hauling. He stared ahead with half-lidded, defeated eyes. He didn't even care who these people were. He just wanted to see other humans. He tried shouting to communicate. The knights understood nothing, said nothing, and simply dragged his completely limp body through the dirt before tossing him aside like cargo. Down in the castle dungeon, our protagonist sat slumped against the cold iron bars of his cell before his patience ran out, and he scrambled up to grab the bars with both hands and scream at the armored guards standing watch outside, who understood nothing because he couldn't speak their language, and neither could they speak his. He slid back to the floor, decided to just sleep, and lay in the damp gloom cataloging his personal disaster tour: bear attack, slime attack, and then when he finally made contact with other people, jail. He was mid-thought about how things couldn't possibly get worse when something hard connected with the side of his head, and he yelped. Through the bars loomed an imposing female knight in full plate armor, hand resting on her sword hilt. He scrambled backward before locating his spine, standing up and pointing an accusing finger. She had absolutely just hit him. The knight tilted her head, expression softening, and asked if it hurt. He confirmed that, yes, she had hit him with her sword, and yes, it had. And then her entire commander facade crumbled. Her cheeks went red. She smiled. It was embarrassingly soft. A wave of relief hit him. She could understand him. Maybe. And then she spun around, cape flying, unlocked the cell, and slung him over her armored shoulder with the casual carrying strength of an industrial forklift. Hanging upside down through the stone arches of what turned out to be a large building, he revised his assessment of her. Monstrous gorilla. She dragged him along without explanation, until a soft, refined voice floated down from somewhere above. Oh, did it fail? The scene resolved into a grand, dimly lit church at night, towering stone arches, wooden pews, and the source of that voice, Maya, stood raising a hand to her cheek in mild surprise, as the gorilla knight hollered that their captive was awake. From inside the tied-up sack he had somehow ended up in, the young man's muffled protest cut off the moment he realized with absolute shock that he could understand every word they were saying. Maya stepped forward with a reassuring smile and explained, possession spell, a spirit inside him, common tongue now active. He compared it to a famous fictional translator from his world, and Maya had no idea what he was talking about. He waved it off and thanked her. While diplomatically characterizing the knight's transportation style as brute force, Maya turned to look at Illias Ratzel. Illias Ratzel flinched. Then the young man's expression shifted to something serious. There were things he couldn't understand himself, and he doubted they'd believe him. Maya told him she was quite good at detecting lies. His eyes lit up like he'd found a party healer in the final dungeon. He dropped to one knee and asked if he could hug her. Maya, charmed and mildly flustered, told him not to tease old ladies. Illias Ratzel, standing in the background with zero patience, told them to get on with it. The sparkle evaporated instantly. He looked ahead, dead serious, and told them the truth. He came from another world. His name was, still in the quiet church, Maya and Illias absorbed this in shared silence. Illias Ratzel noting the story was hard to believe, Maya confirming he didn't seem to be lying. But still, he backed himself up with the full bear and slime incident, gesturing frantically through the recap, at which point Maya's composure collapsed entirely as she zeroed in on one detail. Had he seriously just walked out of Black Demon Lord's Killer Mountain? He took a moment to object to that name on principle. Before Maya hit him with the lore, not even dragons went near that place. He filed away the news that this world has dragons under must see. Meanwhile, Illias Ratzel, whose entire brand is unstoppable and unafraid, was quietly trembling about the bear. Maya filled in the mechanics. The bear had eaten rye fruit, which causes unconscious movement towards slime nests, and the abundant fruit he'd carried down from the mountain was also rye fruit. His mana was so impossibly low that the control effect barely registered on him at all, which earned him an extremely awkward sweat drop moment. He had eaten some of that fruit. Of course he had. Maya told him he was incredibly lucky. He processed this, then asked the real question. Where was his transmigration bonus? His hidden power? His secret crest? The classic weak-looking guy with a secretly broken true ability? Maya stared at him blankly. Then she laid it out with genuine pity. She had never seen mana this low in her life. She wanted to feel sorry for him. No bonus. He pictured his stat screen. MP1. Equipment? A wooden stick. And then he immediately celebrated, because being this negligible meant the slime hadn't been serious about killing him, and safety was the most important stat after all. A hand grabbed him by the collar. Illias Ratzel, unimpressed, pointed out she was honestly surprised he'd reached town with no equipment whatsoever. He defended his wooden stick as an exquisite and trusted companion. Illias Ratzel gave him an apologetic look. Forgive me. I broke it and used it as firewood. He crumpled. His partner. Gone. Then Illias pivoted to warning him. If he'd encountered the mountain bandits out there, he could kiss his life goodbye. He nodded along and mentioned offhandedly that thank God he'd met people like that on the mountain instead. Illias Ratzel went completely still as he then calmly described finding a cave and observing several extremely grim-faced people whose entire energy screamed the bandits. Illias Ratzel grabbed his collar and demanded to know where. Where? Tell me where you saw them! She started shaking him violently, and his attempts to ask her to stop went nowhere until Maya sprinted forward, screaming that she was going to kill the kid. Illias Ratzel released him and apologized stiffly. He hit the floor in genuine emotional crisis. Maya gently asked if he even remembered the exact location. He could, actually. His wildlife period had been educational. Maya's heart melted. She offered a hug. He said yes, and please be gentle. Before that could happen, Illias Ratzel declared she had no time to stand around and announced the subjugation squad was being assembled immediately, spun on her heel, and pointed directly at him. You, lead the way. Up in the mountains, the operation was already underway. Illias Ratzel stationed tall and composed in the mountain forest, having introduced herself as a knight of Ty's kingdom, on orders to subjugate the mountain bandits, while the jagged cave entrance loomed ahead through the rocky foliage outside, crude torches flickering at its mouth where bandits held lazy guard duty outside. Guido sat on a nearby rock, deeply bored, watching a subordinate wander off into the trees, who barely dignified him with a response on the way out. Alone by the fire now, Guido slumped back and grumbled about the quality of his criminal operation to no one. He bit his fingernail. Then a sword drove itself into the earth, and a shockwave tore through the entire camp. Detection magic. And a panicked bandit immediately screamed that the knights were incoming. Our guy looked over at Illias Ratzel with maximum stress and asked if the bandits had magic too. She gestured toward the cave entrance. with the confidence of someone who was never once worried about anything. He stared at her, thought about how she had physically carried a grown adult up this entire mountain, and kept his concerns to himself. The knights launched their assault in a blur of synchronized, extraordinary speed, and he quietly updated his internal notes. Every single one of these people was probably also a gorilla. Illias Ratzel turned to him, expression serious, and told him to stay close. She strode forward into the trees, and he followed with a weak, trembling nod. Inside the cave, a fully armored knight charged into the darkness, while our guy stood frozen against the wall, looking very small, jaw tightening as the scale of violence around him fully registered. Illias Ratzel dashed in at the front with a massive, sweeping sword arc, her voice bouncing off the stone walls as she laid down the rules of engagement. Don't kill the ones who surrender. Don't hold back against the ones who are trying to escape. Illias Ratzel raised their weapons in unison. Deep in the cave, a startled bandit backed away and looked to Guido for direction, while Illias Ratzel scanned the shadows for resistance, and Guido's expression finally arrived at full, boiling rage. The knights hit in synchronized waves. Then Illias Ratzel got a surprise. Stone debris exploded around her, as heavy iron chains whipped out of the darkness and coiled tight around her armor. She looked down at her captor with complete contempt. Guido strained against his own chains and managed something that probably felt threatening in his head. Illias Ratzel pulled back her armored fist and punched directly through the solid stone wall. She stood in the wreckage, calmly drew her sword, looked down at him, and noted it would be inconvenient to transport someone of his size back for a trial. She'd handle his sins right here, right now. Eyes narrowed. Strike sustained. Our guy, watching from the back of the cave, had no words. When the dust settled, Illias Ratzel landed on the cavern floor and lowered her sword. The Ragdoll squad dispersed to sweep for any bandits attempting to use detection magic to escape, with orders to bring back survivors. She then walked over to the young man, entirely satisfied. Seems like everything went without a hitch. He did not share her assessment in the slightest. She seemed genuinely confused. The knights had won decisively. Wasn't he excited by their passionate effort? He waited a beat. Then he asked, very calmly, why she had never once drawn her sword during the entire operation. Her cheeks flushed immediately. I just don't want my sword stained with their dirty blood. He helpfully pointed out he thought he saw her try to draw it, but it appeared to have gotten stuck in the scabbard. Illias Ratzel drew her sword and pointed it directly at him. The narrator cleared its throat. She waved the sword frantically, face fully red. He put both hands up and stepped back. With the cave swept and the operation officially closed on the mountainside, 7 bandits captured out of 30, the rest handled in the fight, and confirmed 0 escaped, the Tai's Kingdom squad began the march back toward the castle. Illias Ratzel walking with full professional composure, carrying our protagonist over her armored shoulder like luggage she'd forgotten she was holding, while he hung upside down in silence and quietly reviewed the absurdity of his entire situation. No special power, no mana, no heroic bloodline, no reason to be here at all. He pictured some vague floating deity somewhere, long beard, robes, shrugging, and concluded this was either God's whim or a summoning that went badly wrong with nobody showing up to apologize for it. He genuinely did not want to fight a demon lord. He did not want a harem. He wanted, specifically and exclusively, to exist somewhere safe and quiet and undangerous. As the castle walls and the sprawling medieval town came into view on the horizon, under a vast cloud-swept sky, he took one deep breath and screamed that wish into the open air with everything he had. Far from all of that, deep inside an untamed stretch of T's Kingdom forest, a hidden camp of canvas tents sat under a dense canopy that let in almost no light. And inside the main tent, a bandit minion knelt on the dirt floor with his head bowed, voice trembling, delivering his report to the man in charge. Gidu and his crew were defeated? Docolla, messy dark hair, facial stubble, dark bandit battle attire, and the ambient aura of a man who has had people disappeared for minor inconveniences. Let the information land for exactly 1 second. Then a slow, wide, deeply sinister grin stretched all the way across his face. He leaned back in his chair, this former member of the kingdom's own assassination squad, and waved one hand at his subordinate, like the news barely warranted his attention. He wasn't worried. He knew precisely how much his men feared his wrath, several dozen times more than anything else this world could throw at them, which meant they weren't idiots. He just sat there in his throne-like chair, smile chilling and fixed, completely unbothered, patient.
The video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Like the video if you're ready for the next part.